Hello everyone and welcome to my Bachelor Nation official channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and gives this video a thumbs up. Chock Chapple, the Golden Bachelorette star, has been making it appear like he is no longer interested in going from Kansas to New York City as he and Joan Vassos originally agreed, implying that Joan may opt to abandon their relationship. As Joan and Chock, who met and fell in love on Season 1 of The Golden Bachelorette, have revealed more about their relationship, Bachelor Nation appears to have more questions. Throughout Joan and Chock's post-season press appearances, they made it apparent that they planned to relocate to New York City once the pandemonium had subsided. While Joan and Chock have been back and forth between her home state of Maryland, his home state of Kansas, and New York City several times in recent months, it's becoming clear that Chock would prefer to remain in Kansas. Joan, who has been outspoken about her desire to be close enough to her children and grandchildren in Maryland, was open to NYC because of the possibility to return home in a few short hours by train. Even still, while Joan has been investigating her choices in New York City, Chock has returned to Kansas without any impetus. Although Joan has been outspoken about her desire to relocate to New York, she has conducted extensive research on her own. Joan mentioned that she and Chock plan to look for real estate in New York City following the Golden Bachelorette, and that they were visiting the Soho neighborhood before the holiday season. While things slowed after Christmas, it was evident that the search was still ongoing. Joan has made a few trips to New York City since the holiday season, but she has spent the majority of her time there alone. Though he must be aware his company in Kansas, Chock does not appear to be as interested in New York City as Joan was. Rather than answering directly, Chock has been disregarding Bachelor Nation's inquiries about the Big Apple. Although Chock hasn't explicitly stated that he does not intend to go to New York City, he has spent the majority of his time in Kansas, whereas Joan has moved about a lot. Despite knowing he wants to be with Joan, Chock has been vocal about how important Kansas is to him. Unfortunately, not supporting Joan's desire to relocate to New York City could be a deal-breaker for the pair. Chock's determination to remain in Kansas may prove to be a far more serious issue than anticipated, especially if he fails to keep Joan informed. Joan and Chock have already had enough of ups and downs in their relationship. Though they are strong together, it appears that their relationship is still in its early stages, and the level of maturity that both of them must develop might be significant. Joan may be unable to overcome her desire to remain in Kansas, especially if she is resolved to relocate to New York City anyhow. Joan may find herself single again after the Golden Bachelorette, despite her efforts to work out a deal with Chock. Joan Vassos and Chock Chapple's love story captivated audiences on the first season of The Golden Bachelorette. Their connection was undeniable, filled with warmth, laughter, and the promise of a shared future. But as the real world settled in, the dream they had so openly shared seemed to be at odds with reality. At first, it all seemed simple. After the whirlwind romance on The Golden Bachelorette, they would move to New York City together. Joan, a devoted mother and grandmother, had made it clear that she wanted to be close enough to her family in Maryland while also embracing the vibrant city life. Chock, a man who had spent his entire life in Kansas, had initially agreed to the plan. However, as the months went by, Joan started to notice a shift in his enthusiasm. Chock had always spoken fondly of Kansas. It was where his business thrived, where his friends gathered every Sunday to watch football, and where his roots were firmly planted. At first, he had been swept up in the excitement of a new adventure. The allure of New York City had been intoxicating, but prioritizing her family, and while they would always be the most important part of her life, she also wanted to experience something for herself. New York City offered that, a new chapter, a new beginning, a place where she and Chock could carve out their own world together. But the more she pressed forward, the more he seemed to retreat. At first, the signs were subtle. When they visited Soho before the holidays, Joan had been full of excitement. She had spent weeks researching neighborhoods, attending open houses, and envisioning a new life there. Chock had seemed engaged at first, but then he started to make excuses. A deal with his business needed his attention. His best friend was going through a rough patch. He needed just a little more time before making such a big decision. After the holidays, things became even more apparent. Joan found herself making trips to New York alone. While she was walking through potential apartments, imagining their future together, Chock was in Kansas, tending to his responsibilities. Joan tried to be patient. She understood that change was difficult, especially for someone so deeply rooted in their home state. But the more time passed, the more she started to question his commitment to their shared vision. She brought it up gently at first. One evening, as they sat on the porch of his Kansas home, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Joan turned to him. "Chock, do you still want to move to New York?" she asked, keeping her tone light but firm. Chock hesitated, running a hand through his silver hair. "I do, Joan. I really do. But I don't know. Kansas is home. My life is here. I thought I could just pack up and leave, but it's harder than I expected." Joan nodded, digesting his words. "I understand that, truly, but we made a plan together, and I need to know if that's still our plan." He sighed, looking out at the open land stretching before them. "I love you, Joan, but I also love my life here. I don't want to lose either." The conversation left her feeling unsettled. She knew Chock loved her, but was love enough if they wanted different futures. Weeks passed, and things remained unchanged. Chock continued to spend most of his time in Kansas, while Joan went back and forth between Maryland and New York. The distance, both physical and emotional, was starting to take a toll. Friends and fans of the Golden Bachelorette began to notice the cracks, and Bachelor Nation was abuzz with speculation. Joan tried to remain hopeful. She wanted to believe that Chock would come around, that he would see the possibilities of the life they could build in New York. But deep down, doubt crept in. Was she forcing something that wasn't meant to be? Then, one day, while sitting in a charming cafe in Soho, sipping her coffee alone, she had a moment of clarity. She loved Chock, but she also loved herself, and she had to be honest about what she wanted. If Chock wasn't ready to take that step, then maybe they weren't meant to take it together. When she returned to Kansas, she knew they needed to have a real conversation, one that would determine their future once and for all. As she stood on his doorstep, taking a deep breath before knocking, she realized that love wasn't just about grand gestures or shared dreams. It was about compromise, understanding, and sometimes letting go. Would Chock finally take the leap for love? Or would Joan find herself walking away from the relationship she had fought so hard for? Only time would tell. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, do not forget to subscribe to my channel and do not miss any update.